Welcome back, Atlanta. We're back in studio today, and this episode is dedicated to those that have always wanted to write, to those that feel like you have been called to writing and to writing your first book, but you have felt somewhat stuck. Today we have an expert with us, Ashley Witcher, and she is going to be talking to us about her story and her journey, and you're going to want to stay to the end. So do us a favor and stay and hear this amazing story and this amazing testimony, and we hope that it does inspire you. Ashley, we're so excited to have you here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm so happy we got you on. I'm really, and this just really grateful because I didn't know all the things that you've accomplished. And so knowing it now, I'm even more honored to be sitting with you.
Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege anytime I get to come and, just share my story.
Absolutely. So I'm going to introduce you for those that don't know you, sort of read through your bio.
Okay.
And if there's anything I left out afterwards, feel free to jump in.
Okay.
All right. Ashley owns a boutique publishing company called the Write Legacy LLC that is committed to producing literary works that promote personal transformation, inspire change, and empower others. Ashley is an Amazon best-selling author who has published both traditionally and self-published. Her first publication was released in June 2015. Since then, she has worked as a freelance editor, published photographer, and contributed chapters to other best-selling books. It was her heart for life transforming literary works and the demand for quality services for authorpreneurs. I love that birthed the Write Legacy. And she says, in quote, "The words you speak will last a lot longer than any amount of money you can leave behind." This is awesome. I love this. What kind of legacy will your words create for you? That right there, drop the mic. That's so good. And mention that she's also a beautiful wife and a wonderful mom of two sons.
Yes. Teenagers.
I don't know how you're doing it, looking so young and gorgeous.
Thank you.
With two sons,
Listen.
Teenagers.
Yes.
Yeah. Anything I left out that you wanted to add in?
Not that I could think of. I think you covered everything, especially when you threw my husband and children in. So, yes, definitely. I'm a proud mother, wife, and I love, just the writing world in general. So I'm excited to talk about it.
We're going to jump into your writing world because we're excited to hear about it. So what inspired you? What was it that motivated you to start writing, to become an author?
Okay, so I actually discovered my love for writing. I was about 15. I was in high school. Wow. And it actually started as a competition. Really, I was competing. Nobody knew I was competing with them. But a classmate of mine, she was writing, and she was actually a playwright. She was writing a play.
Yes.
And so I was reading it, and as I was reading it in my mind, I was just like, oh, I can write a better story than this, right? Because I was an avid reader. I would read. My mom, she loved to read as well, but she worked so much. She would buy all these books, all these Black authors, and we had a bookshelf. She would just be putting them on the bookshelf. I'm gonna read these, and she wasn't reading it, so I started reading them.
Right.
And so I'm reading all these books, and so that really got my imagination going. And so I wrote a book. A story, I should say. It never published it. It was called Consequences. And so I remember it was my sophomore year in high school. And I remember I don't know how I passed geometry or anybody in the class because I started handwriting this story.
Wow.
And as I was writing it, a couple of my classmates started reading it. Next thing you know, every time we come to class, they're calling, I got it first, second, third. It was like a line. They would pull a number, take a number. And I would be sitting there writing. That's why I say I don't know how I pass. Sitting there writing, and as soon as I would get done with a page, I'd pass it to the first, whoever was first in line, and they'll read and pass. And so I began writing, and it was so funny. My senior year, I was in yearbook class, and our first week there, one of the guys, one of my classmates, he came in, and he said, I heard you wrote a story, back, a couple years ago, he said, I heard it's still a long waiting list to read it. I'm like, no. I said, no, it's not. He was like, well, I want to read it. I said, okay.
Wow.
So I let him read it. I was like, it is not a waiting list. Y'all think it's a 2-year waiting list to read this story? And so it was definitely exciting. Just to see the reaction of people. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe this. Why'd you let that happen? I'm mad. It's just all kinds of just emotions behind it.
Yeah.
And so that's when I first really discovered. I'm like, I kind of like this. So
that was your first big hit.
Yeah, yes.
You were a bestseller.
Yeah, exactly. In high school.
Then, right. You had all your peers excited. They all could connect with you.
Yeah.
Based on your writing. And what was Consequences about? Just brief.
So it was listen, it's something I should have been writing, but I'm reading these grown books. So it was like a teenage love affair.
Okay.
It was just stuff going on. It was fighting. It was it was just real ghetto.
Yeah, it was like the coldest winter ever or something like that.
It was mild compared to that, but it was like, it was touching. It was kind of touching it just a little bit. And so that's probably why I never published it, because it was like, once I grew up and kind of like rededicated my life back to Christ, I was like, okay, he took my writing, because I was like, I didn't want to write these kind of books. I want to write some fiction. I want to put a story together, just have your imagination, like in high school, how you run around. But I submitted my writing to the Lord, and I made. Wow. I've been working on a Christian fiction book. I'm not done yet, but it's been my hardest one to write so far.
That is exciting. You're getting me like I don't know what it's about, but I want to read it.
Yes,
based on the story about Consequences, I'm like, I want to read the Christian fiction when it comes out.
Yes.
So. I know that before you were married, obviously you were a single mom.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, you talked about how your writing changed.
Yes.
How does being a single mom play into your writing and you being an author?
I feel like it gave me another purpose for it, and even kind of like it kind of plays into like the name of my publishing company, the Write Legacy, and it made me as I wrote, it made me think of legacy more. And so that's why I said that your words, they'll last longer than any money, because the money, you can spend that money up, but your words will continue on. And I like to use Martin Luther King for an example.
Oh, yes.
I have a dream. Everybody can at least quote a little piece of that, or they can tell you about the speech, I have a dream. We don't know how much money he left, or if he had money, anything like that. But one thing that's been carrying on his words, generation after generation. Right. Like my kids, you know for sure they're gonna learn about Martin Luther King in school. If they don't learn about anybody else, they're gonna learn about Martin Luther King. So, and they'll learn about his impact and how he, caused change, and they always take them back to that speech. And so I'm like, our words, they are our legacy as well. It's not always just about money, but what kind of impact are you making on people? And so that's, I learned early on that my words are impactful.
Yes.
So
what can you name one experience that helped you to come to that realization and that discovery that your words are impactful and really are your legacy?
I think I just look back at, even after my first book, just people, just the reviews coming back. People like, oh my God, like, I really needed that. Wow. I really needed to read this, or this helped me, with my relationship, or this helped me, with my walk with God, or, just even, just even inspiring others, like, now I want to write, I think I could tell my story too now.
Yes.
And so that right there let me know as well. Okay. Yeah. So this is doing more than I thought it would, and so it makes it worth it.
That's so powerful. I'm wondering, like, what was it like for you to write your first book? It was the first time you've done it.
Yeah.
We kind of talked a little bit before we started recording, like, how long did it take?
Yes.
And you were talking about having, like, these writer moments and then stopping and then going back to it for a year and a half. Tell us, like, more about what was that like for you?
Most definitely some people who've never attempted to write a book will think, oh, that's easy, you just write. It's not. No, it's not. And this is something that I also tell other authors that, I may be publishing their book for them. I speak to them because I'm like, I can speak to you from both sides of this, okay?
Right.
And so I said, now I know it's like you'll have a roller coaster of emotions. I let them know, like, you're going to experience the fear, you're going to experience the excitement, you're going to wonder, like, okay, what are people going to think, and things like that, especially when you're sharing, like, your testimony, you're getting like detailed about your past and things like that. You do wonder, like, how is this going to impact those that I love? And so you go through a range of emotions. Is anybody going to buy my book? What will my family think? Because I went through that. Like, in my first book, I shared some things that I hadn't told my family.
Wow. And they read it for the first, they heard about it for the first time.
Yes. And even when I'm gonna tell you, when I first called myself being done with my book, and I let.
So you were done at some point.
I said I was done. I'm like, I'm done. And I'm like, okay, so I wanted to get some early reviews to include in the book.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, so my leader at the time, my spiritual leader at the time, I sent it to him. I said, can you write a review for my book? I think it'd be nice for you to give me an endorsement, whatever. He read it. And he was talking about how good it was. He said, but there's one thing missing. Yeah. And I'm like, well, what is it? He said, you're missing. You need to put your testimony in the book. My testimony was not in that book at first. I'm like, why I got to tell that? Like, I want to just talk about the subject at hand. Why do I have to put my business in this book? But he said, no. He said, because this is what is going to allow others to know what qualifies you to write this book.
That's so good. That is
like,
so good.
He said, this, like, you have to have it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't want to because I was still dealing kind of like with just the pain of it and the emotions. And so, me writing, it was like, I'm writing through tears because I'm like, oh my God. I'm really telling, I try not to talk about it because it was painful, but I was, at the time. And I was like, oh my God, but now I'm writing it and I'm going to share it and people are going to read it. My family, and I'm like, oh my God. And even one day my kids are going to read this and I'm just like, oh, help me, and so it was very emotional. But he was right in the end. It needed to be in there. And I, the people, those who were close to me, a couple of them was like, I didn't know. Like, they read it and I was like, oh, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear what you think, but it was mostly, I didn't know that it was like that. I didn't know you went through that, and things like that. But I believe it gave them a new perspective, a new respect for me as well. And so I was just like, man. And even after I wrote, before I turned it into the to the publisher, I had another someone edit it for me, and I said, when you read my testimony portion, I said, when you read it, now I don't want to write and sound like a victim. Right. I don't want to write and sound like I'm trying to paint other people in a bad light. I just want to tell the truth.
Right.
That's all I want to do. I said, so if you feel like that's what I'm doing, let me know. Mark it up so I can go in and change it, because that's not my intent. Right. My intent is to just share my testimony, the truth, my truth. Right. And not, try to make anyone look bad, not try to make myself look like I'm just innocent and, woe is me. That's not it, because within that testimony, I was like, I have to take responsibility for the part that I played in what hurt me, because I allowed some of that to happen. Right. And so, so that was very, very big for me when writing, my testimony and putting it in the book. And so, but it worked out.
I'm thinking about what you're saying, and I remember going to this workshop some time ago, and I heard some of the concerns from people that wanted to write a book, and some of the things were, I don't necessarily want to tell my testimony because it may expose other people. Yes. And how do you go about doing that? And I do remember the publishing company really encouraged people to still tell their story. If you want to sort of maybe change the names to conceal identity, or that's fine, but to continue. And I think that really does stop many people.
It does. It definitely does. And I deal with that. I actually ended up making like a video or reel or something just to tell them how to write when they're in that position, and they're like, okay, I don't want, I'm going to have to expose some people. And at one point, I was like, look, they should have did what they did when they did it, okay? You never know who's going to become a writer.
Well, that's the truth.
But at the same time,
That's
it's
the
just
truth.
like, it's just like you want to make sure that you're writing from a healed place.
Yes.
You want to make sure that you're writing from a place of a victor, and not a victim.
Yes.
And so if you feel like you can't write, because it's too raw, or you haven't forgiven, or you just haven't even tried to pursue your healing from that, then I advise you not to write until you get to that place.
That's so powerful. So it sounds like there are some prerequisites to writing, and it's not just the technical part of it,
right,
but it's the emotional and the psychological part that you really have to be in a place, especially if you are telling something as intimate like your story and things that have happened to you, whether it be trauma or just other things that have really wrecked the core of you. You have to be in a place of at least peace or trying to pursue healing before you start writing.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it, especially if you write like a faith-based writer, because, again, I also tell my authors, I'm like, listen, your book, once you publish that book, that becomes a mini platform for you.
Wow.
People are going to look at you and want to interview you. They're going to look at you as maybe she's an expert, because they can. If you can write a whole book on a subject, you have to know something.
Absolutely.
Like you're knowledgeable or something. So,
Right.
and so when you do that, when you write a book, like it's best to, because you don't want to have people want to interview you and you crying the whole time, can't even speak because you still dealing with the wounds. Like, come on, like And so for me, if you're writing like a nonfiction book, a faith-based book, a inspirational book, you want to be able to do it from a healed place, in a place that you can actually help someone else, not pull them in to have pity with you.
Right.
We don't want to wallow in that and be in a stuck place, because that's all you're stuck in that place.
Right.
You want to get unstuck and pursue your healing so that you can be effective and impactful in what you're doing. And so
people can, I think, feel the difference too, like the writing from an empowerment stance versus a sort of victim stance, not to call it that, but really changing the narrative, because you want people to feel empowered, but you have to write it from a place of empowerment, a place of power, so they can feel that. But you talked about platform and writing sort of opening the door or opening more doors. What does that look like for those that are still thinking about writing their book? What are some of the benefits to it in terms of that platform?
Oh, yes, definitely. So like I said, people will view you as an expert, whether you feel like you are or not. They'll think like, oh, yeah, she wrote a whole book. So she,
That's
and
a huge
so,
accomplishment.
Yes,
Absolutely.
it is. And a lot of people don't look at it as that. And I can't act like, well, my first one I felt like that, but after that, the third and fourth, and I'm like, okay, this is just what I do,
That's
but
what it is, just a part of you.
Your
love. And
yes. And so people will call on you, to speak on the topic of your book. They're going to look at you as somebody that's knowledgeable, whether you are or not, because everybody, again, anybody can write a book about anything and not be an expert in it.
Right.
And so I don't want to just give that, perspective that that automatically makes you know, but there's many people who are going to look at you as that. Now you have a certain influence, in that in the genre or the the subject matter, and so because even for me, I didn't know that meant that I was supposed to be a speaker now all of a sudden. Until they were like, until they were like, I wrote my first book. Okay, we want to invite you to speak on. I'm like, you want me to do what? And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And so, I kind of like went through my book, like, well, let me just get some stuff I wrote about,
That's how you do it.
And I teach authors like how to create talking points, speaking points. So that way they're ready in case, they have an interview. And I also try to, if I see somebody that's looking for authors, I'll recommend, like, hey, they looking for, somebody to interview for a podcast or for, whatever it might be.
Yes.
And so but yes, it definitely opens doors for that, for speaking. It helps to even expand your reach, because you never know who will get your book. When we publish books, we have, distribution that pretty much worldwide.
Wow.
And so it's not just Amazon. It may be on Apple Books. It may be in BarnesandNobles.com, Walmart.com. It'll be some of everywhere.
Wow.
And it can land in the hands of anyone. You never know. And I also encourage all the authors, like, hey, put your contact information at the back of your book, at the end of your book, so that they can reach out for interviews or whatever it may be. They may want you to come and, host or speak at a conference or a seminar, anything pertaining to the topic of your book. And so
it sounds like there's so many like open doors that happen once you get through that first project.
Yes.
But it takes time. It takes diligence. What are some other skills or traits that you believe that writers need to have?
Oh yeah. So besides speaking, like that's the biggest one though, like really. And it's not always easy. And you have some that are introverted. They're like, yeah, I'm not, I don't want to do that. And so I even kind of like help them like how to market as an introvert, because it can be a little difficult. But besides speaking, just even being able to, encourage other authors and even show them like how to make it through the writing process.
Right.
Like that is just the willingness to want to give back in a way.
Love it. Right.
And so I look for that as well. And to even be able to like really be able to teach from your book. Like, can you teach? Like, take that, like, turn that. I'm not saying you have to create courses or anything like that, but to be able to pull lessons from your book, especially for these, I'm speaking mostly for nonfiction, because, fiction is characters and things like that. But even in those, in fiction books, there can be messages and lessons and things like that. But you want to be able just to pull the gold out of your book.
Yes. That's awesome. I love that, because you're taking that content and it's being repurposed in many ways, in many forms. So through speaking, through teaching, through inspiring, through lessons, through building that legacy that you talked about. Yeah. So it really does open up so many doors for individuals once they actually do it.
Yeah.
But there's a process. So, and you talked about the writer's process. If you don't mind just touching on that for a moment, what is the writer's process?
Well, it's different for everyone, but and I kind of talk about that a lot with my authors as well, because we have those that like to plan. They're like, I'm going to go do an outline. I'm going to stick to the outline, and then we have those we like to call pantsters. And they say they write by the seat of their pants. So they're really flexible, free. They write without an outline. They write whenever they feel like it, whenever they feel inspired, things like that. And so that, like I said, the process is different for everybody, because we're all inspired differently. But most definitely, you have when you get the idea, you pick, okay, this is what I want to write on. This is the subject I want to write on. Okay, and this is what I know about this subject. And then at that point, you determine, okay, do I need to do further research? Because with me, especially with my first book, I had to do further research, because it was kind of in an area I wasn't super familiar with. But, I'm like, but I have to, write on this. And so you may have to do some research. And it's good to have at least a loose outline, even if you don't stick to it all. It's just helps to deal with that writer's block. And helps to deal, helps you to kind of like stay on task and kind of keep your book organized, so you won't jump different subjects. I'm like, in this chapter, you're supposed to talk about, windows. Now you talk about cars, and we like why. And so it helps you to kind of like keep yourself on track, and it also helps to set goals, little milestones as you write, as well as I encourage everyone to turn off that internal editor. Just write.
Sounds like me.
Just write. You don't have to edit as you write. Like, just write. That's what your editor's for afterwards. Or even if you want to go back after you've done, because when you try to edit as you write, it takes you like, I don't know how much time
Right.
to try to get done. You'll be writing
It
forever.
adds to the writer's process, and that
Yes.
doesn't have to be the process
No.
because you have an editor.
Yes.
So this is really good advice and really
Yeah.
good tips. I'm learning as I'm
Yeah.
listening to you, and I'm
Good.
sure those that are hearing are learning. But
Yes.
we are 5 minutes to close, and
Okay.
I am really interested to hear, what was that book? The one about the letters to sons that all these mothers come together. You wrote on identity. I'm really, really intrigued to hear, what did you write about? Can you give us a snippet of it, and how did that impact your sons?
Okay, so that was back in 2017. So identity, I just really wanted to affirm their identity in Christ, who God says that they are, because I spoke about, in this world, if you allow the world, they'll tell you who you are if you let them. And they're gonna change it every single time.
Yeah.
And not only are they gonna change it every single time, if you continue to let them, you're gonna have to try to become something different every time to get their approval.
Wow.
And you're not gonna be able to please everyone.
That's right.
And so I really just kind of like walk them through, who God says that they are,
Yeah.
and what it means to be like a man of your word, and those type of things. And I'm like, yes, I can never teach you to be a man because I'm a woman, I'm your mother.
Right.
I said, but I can give you my perspective,
Yeah.
and just from the mother's point of view, this is the type of man that I would hope that you will become, based off of, all the things that I'm pouring to you all throughout the years, all the prayers, and things like that. And so that's pretty much was the whole, like, just flow of my chapter for identity. And, with each chapter, I had each mom like, okay, you say a prayer for your son at the end, to cover. And my sons, they haven't read it yet. I did get, my son just turned, my oldest turned 16. I gave it to him.
2017. We're in 2023.
Yes.
When are they going to read that
Yes,
chapter?
I gave it to him for his 16th birthday. He just turned 16.
Nice.
So I gave it to him. I said, I think it's time for you to read this.
Yeah.
And because my mother wrote a chapter in there, I said, and read your grandma's chapter as well.
Wow.
So
that's going to be, I can't wait to hear the follow-up.
Yes.
How he responds to that. And also just years to come, right? You talked about your words being a legacy, and what legacy are you going to leave? Just at 16, that pivotal time, him reading that. But that won't be the last time he reads it.
No, right.
He'll read it years to come, and I'm sure he'll pass it on to his sons,
Yes.
and his sons' sons, and his sons, and it will continue.
Yes.
And that's the legacy that you created.
Yeah.
The legacy that we can create when we become writers.
Right.
We are closing, but I really want you to inspire the writers that are listening. I'm calling them writers now. Maybe they haven't written their first book officially, but they believe they have been called to do it. But there's been obstacles in the way. If you can inspire or just give some inspiration to those.
Oh, definitely. For every writer out there, I encourage you to keep writing. Like, don't stop. Don't worry about being perfect. You just write whatever's in your heart, whatever you feel led to write, and, just allow it to just grow with you.
Yeah.
Because it's going to grow with you. As you mature, you're going to see your writing begin to, mature with you.
That's amazing.
So don't stop writing, whatever you do, no matter how you feel, because writing is healing in and of itself. But, use your writing to help you to move throughout the different stages of life. And when the time is right, when you've written that one, you'll know.
Wow.
You'll know.
You'll know. You'll feel it. There'll be a, this is the one.
Yes.
Sort of like what we were talking about before.
Yes.
I love it. Don't have to be perfect.
No.
Your writing is going to grow with you. That's that's a beauty.
It is.
It's growing with you at the different stages of your life. And so I know you own a publishing company. How can people reach out to you if they're interested in publishing their book or just learning more about how to get started?
Oh, yes. They can visit thewritelegacy.com, and Write is WRITE. Thewritelegacy.com. You can follow us on Instagram at The Write Legacy as well. And, yeah, definitely follow us because I have some things coming up, some workshops coming up. I'm doing some mini, tutorials and things.
Love
so
it.
most definitely check us out.
I'm going to be in those minute tutorials, y'all. So if you come in, I'll see y'all there. But it's just so encouraging, so inspiring. I loved hearing your story. I know there's so much more. Yeah. So we got to bring you on for a part 2 to dig deeper. But you guys can find her books where...
yes, you can find my books. You can go to ashleywitcher.com, and I have multiple books, even some that I don't, share online, but you'll find them there. I have some things for teenagers as well. Wow. And so check it out.
Check it out, y'all. ashleywitcher.com. Check it out. Browse through and purchase some of her books. And again, stay tuned because she will be hosting some mini tutorials, and you're going to want to be in the number so that you could be a part of this legacy that she's talking about. So, Ashley, it's been an honor and such a privilege chatting with you, learning about your story, and just gleaning from your wisdom. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been an honor. I had fun. I'm definitely coming back.
Yeah, we got her. She's coming back, y'all. Well, guys, we are so excited, and we really appreciate you for watching and tuning into this episode. If you enjoyed it, do us a favor and share it out to some of your friends, colleagues, and family members so we can get the message out. We love you all so much, and we'll see you soon. Stay tuned.